Hi, this is Neill Thew from Crew Leader Development, and in today's Crew Short I'd like to talk about the differences between authority and leadership, because I think there's very significant differences between the two of these, and I also think that far too often they're mistaken for each other or confused, whereas the exercise of authority and the exercise of leadership are in fact very different acts, and they're acts that should really be used to achieve rather different ends. Now, in terms of authority, there are two kinds of authority. There's formal authority, which derives from the position you hold, and it will be a position of power and prestige and influence. Or there's informal authority, which derives from the ways in which people recognise your personal characteristics. So it could be your expertise and know-how, it could be your charisma, it could be your moral authority. But in both cases, I think there's a kind of a semi-visible transaction, because if I'm authorising you, if I'm a member of your authorising group, and I'm prepared to grant you authority and power over me, then in return for that, I actually want three very specific services from you. And we see this in nature. And these services are direction, protection, and order. So if you look at a tribe of gorillas, and the authority figure within the tribe is the silverback, the alpha male, the dominant male, there are three situations in which the rest of the tribe will look to him, and they'll either copy him or they'll essentially let him tell them what to do. So in the morning, the first thing that happens is that he's the first person to leave wherever the tribe has slept, and he will set off in the jungle in a particular direction, and the rest of the tribe will follow him. So they're trusting him, they're entrusting him to provide them with direction. If they suddenly come across a predator, they'll look to him and copy exactly what he does. So they're trusting him to know how to protect them. And thirdly, at night, when they all go to bed, they allow him to show them where they have to sleep. And what he typically does is he puts the nursing mothers and the pregnant females in the centre, and he puts the young, strong male adolescents on the outside. So the tribe allow him to impose order and structure for them. Now, if we go back to thinking about the difference between technical problems and adaptive challenges that we've looked at in some previous Crew videos, one way of thinking about a technical problem is that it's a problem that can be solved or can be resolved with current know-how. And it's very often the know-how of the authority figure herself or himself that can then solve the problem effectively on behalf of the group. An adaptive challenge, for example, Gandhi trying to mobilise people to overthrow British colonial rule in India. An adaptive challenge is a challenge that cannot be resolved on the basis of current know-how. Gandhi had to mobilise people to create new forms of behaviour, to think in terms of new values. And this was about the beginning of the non-violent resistance movement, which eventually did indeed lead to the overthrow of British colonial rule. So in terms of technical problems, adaptive challenges, authority, leadership, and in terms of these tasks of providing direction, protection, and order, we see that really very different situations arise. So if you're using authority in order to overcome a technical problem, then in terms of direction, the role of the authority figure is to show people the problem, provide definition of the problem, and provide a solution to the problem. The role of the authority figure in protecting people is to protect them from external threats whilst this problem is being solved. And the role of the authority figure in providing order is to orient people to their current roles, keep people doing what they're doing, restore order, because order will have been knocked about a bit while this problem arose and while it was being solved, and to maintain norms. The exercise of leadership is pretty much the exact opposite in all cases. Exercising leadership to mobilise people to make progress on their adaptive challenges, in the first place, in terms of direction, involves identifying the adaptive challenge, naming it. It will often have not been named, it will often have been the elephant in the room, and then framing or helping other people, helping the stakeholders, to frame the key questions and issues that will need to be explored and debated in order to begin to make progress on the challenge. In terms of protection, the role of leadership is to disclose the external threats, to help people see them, and that might be a frightening and discomforting thing to do, but to help people see them so that they can be real and begin to take steps in order to deal with them. And in terms of order, well, the exercise of leadership involves unsettling the current order, because the current order in itself is insufficient for making progress on the adaptive challenge. The order needs to be developed and grown. So this includes disorienting people from their current roles, trying to move them towards different kinds of roles, and stopping them, in fact, from resettling too quickly. It involves exposing conflict between different stakeholder factions, or allowing the conflict to be exposed. And it involves challenging norms, challenging current norms, or allowing those norms to be challenged. Now, unsurprisingly, if people are very used to having an authority figure who directs them and protects them and gives them order, when they're in a situation where they face an adaptive challenge and you're now exercising leadership, you're very likely to experience certain kinds of pushback, particularly if in the past you have been the authority figure. Because what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to disappoint people at the sort of rate that they can understand and that they can cope with, and that they can at least then stay in the game, even if they are disappointed with you or angry with you, or you're taking a certain amount of heat. Because people will experience that you're no longer somehow providing them with the direction and protection and order that they've come to expect. The other thing that moving into a position of leadership often involves is reaching across the lines. Very often, if you've been an authority figure, you will have been an authority figure for a specific authorising group or a specific faction. Whereas if you're then moving into a position of leadership and you're needing to involve all the stakeholders and all the different factions in mobilising and moving forwards, then you're going to have to speak to factions other than the one from which you originally came. So this beautiful photograph, which is an archive photo from 1961, is a photograph of an East German border guard disobeying orders in order to allow the little boy to cross over the border. So he's sort of speaking to or reaching out to factions that he's actually been told are not his people and that he shouldn't be getting involved with. Now, something I found really useful when I was just getting really clear in my own mind about these differences between authority and leadership was to look at a representative sample of world leaders, of political leaders, and to ask myself the question, referring back to this table, of these leaders, which of them seem to me to be exercising or primarily exercising authority, and which of them seem to be primarily exercising leadership? And if you read the situation in the same way as I do, I'm not saying that I'm right, but if you read the situation in the same way as I do and as Trevor does, then I think you would probably agree that there's a great deal of exercise of authority on show, and there's precious little exercise of leadership on show, which in a way also speaks to the fact that the exercise of leadership is difficult and is not something that should be done alone, and is something for which most people require proper support. So, if you're interested in these issues and you'd like to talk to us further, we'd love contact, then please feel free to contact either myself, Neill, at crewleaderdevelopment.com, or my partner Trevor at crewleaderdevelopment.com. We have a website, crewleaderdevelopment.com, on which you'll find a whole range of other free resources relating to adaptive leadership and immunity to change coaching, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.